What do we need to know in order to comprehend?
Fluency and background knowledge.
Definitely. Absolutely. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, you're fine. Yep, you can take one of each of those. What grades do you teach?
Teach 5th grade.
Okay.
I'm going to be teaching 3rd grade.
Okay, perfect.
Also.
Come on in. We were just talking.
That isn't enough.
Where are you teaching at?
Snyder.
In Snyder.
Okay. So I taught 5th for 12 years. And then moved in 3rd grade to Elgin. And I've gotten rid of 2 teachers, so I now get to do 5th and 3rd grade.
Oh, wow. So you're departmentalizing your mid-grades there? Okay. Well, we're going to talk about comprehension. We were just talking about a couple of the things that we need for comprehension. And this is kind of a fill in the blank on your handout there, but we're talking, do you want this pen? We need phonological decoding skills and word recognition skills. We need oral language abilities, including vocabulary, short-term and working memory abilities, background knowledge, ability to link new learning with previous learning, and the ability to attend to the text, stay engaged, and respond to the text. So these are a lot of things that kids need to have in place in order to comprehend what they are reading. And that's why it is so difficult as we're looking at all of these things. And I've got these particular points out of this book called 50 Nifty Activities for the 5 Components and 3 Tiers of Reading Instruction. It's by Judith Dodson. And within it, she lists the 5 components of reading, and then she's got several activities that you can do. So if you've got a small group, if you've got kids on APPs that need some extra interventions, this is full of different interventions that you can do with students. Yeah, it's at the top, I believe, right underneath where you were writing. Yeah, so it's an excellent book that's going to pull in just some hands-on things that you can do with kids. This chart, I was first introduced to this chart when I was a REACH coach. We had extensive training in K through 2, basically learning how to read. And what this chart says is we need decoding times language comprehension to get to reading comprehension. And it's a multiplication symbol because if any of these pieces are missing and are a 0, we get 0 with reading comprehension, because if we multiply anything by 0, we get 0. So even, if our students can read every single word, but they don't know what the words mean, we're not going to get reading comprehension. If they have a large vocabulary and they're very oral, but they can't decode the words, we're not going to get reading comprehension. So they might have great listening comprehension. You can read them anything. They can tell you every single thing that happens, make inferences, do all those things, but when you put the text in front of them, if they can't decode, they're not going to get to it. And this chart and this quote right here, no comprehension strategy is powerful enough to compensate for the inability to read the words. That completely changed the way I thought about my reading instruction. And any of these things, if you want them, if you email me, I'll send all of it to you. But yes, feel free to take pictures. And I thought about our middle school students that we were working with, because, by 3rd grade, we switched to reading to learn instead of learning to read. And so we're very fortunate in Elgin. Our Title I teacher at the middle school is a former kindergarten teacher. And so when she pulls those kids out, she does the same basic assessments with them that you guys do in 2nd grade, with Dibbles, or she's pulled some other decoding assessments for them to determine exactly where they are at. And so she's working phonics with our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders because that's what they missed and that's what they need. Any strategy that I give them, if they can't do this, doesn't mean anything to them. And so I also have a co-taught class, and so I have all of our IEP students, and there's a special ed teacher that comes in and teaches with me. It's a little different this year. We have a different group of students each year. But last year, my students we had pre-primer, first grade, second grade, in the sixth grade. And I asked our principal, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to move them, or do you want me to prepare them for the sixth grade reading test that we know that they're probably not going to do very well on? And she said, move them. And so with that blessing, I was able to do things with them that I've never thought I would have to do as a sixth grade teacher, and very thankful for the training I had. But, moved them from kindergarten to a second grade level. I mean, that's huge because they're already in sixth grade. Something's not been happening for them. And so it's the correct intervention and time is what they need. So that's why when you think about the interventions that the state's making us do, all the extra time, and we're, how do we fit that in? It's because research has shown they need that time and that correct intervention. So those kiddos that we wish we had more time for and more individualized instruction, it's so important to try to give them some of those things to work on. But just thinking about that, knowing if we don't have that decoding in place, all of these other things aren't going to fall into place. But there are things that we can do as we're working on the decoding. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is some of these things that we can be building these skills up as we're working on decoding so that they don't fall even further behind. So before, comprehension strategies are used before, during, and after. We know that as teachers. Before, we're going to preview and set the purpose. During, we're going to stop and check. And after, we're going to recall and evaluate. And we need to make sure we're doing all three of those things as we're reading with students and as they're reading, so that we can figure out if they are struggling, what part that they're struggling with. This is something called it's an idea I saw on Pinterest. It's a retelling bracelet. And I've taken it and just kind of, because all I saw was the picture, was basically what they had, and used that to help students. Now, I didn't like the idea of a bracelet because everybody has different size arms and it was hard. So I made a retelling stick, and all I did was I used a pipe cleaner and beads. And basically what the student has to do is, if they're retelling the story, or we're moving them into summarizing this, they have to say something for every bead. And the green is the go, and the red is the stop. And I used these last with kindergartners, so we only have 3 beads. But with older students, where there's more details in our story, I would definitely put more beads in between. And who this is going to help, it's going to help the kid who tells you one thing, and it's going to help the kid who tries to tell you every single thing that happened in the story. Because then I tell them, you can only choose 5 things. Tell me something from the beginning, tell me 3 things from the middle, and tell me something from the end. And so what I have them do when I give this to them is first just think. And as you're thinking, okay, first thing, the next thing, and the end. And then they tell it to a partner so that they've all got practice. And so I'm telling you, here, and as I'm saying it, so I've got some tactile things, as I'm saying it, here's what happened, here's the middle, here's the end. And then you get a chance to retell the story to me. So working on that working on that summarization with kids, give them something tactile first to help them. And then eventually, you can move away from that, and you'd be able to say at a higher grade level, okay, how many beads are you moving? Just to remind them that they've only got that chance. So something super simple, something pretty cheap with pipe cleaners and beads, but it just will help them if they're having problems with that retell.
Could also go towards writing. It could transfer to the writing.
Definitely.
The parts, like with this one, I'm seeing topic, sentence, detail 1, detail 2, detail 3, and conclusion.
Absolutely. And if they can tell somebody first, I always tell my students, if you can talk about it, you can write about it. So if they had those ideas in their head first, they could do that. Here's my beginning, my middle, my end, my topic sentence, my details, and my conclusion. And I'm going to tell you first, and then I'm going to go and write it down. Because writing it adds a whole other layer to what we're trying to have them do. But absolutely, that would work for that as well. Anything that's going to help them. And if it's tactile and they can touch it and move it, it just kind of helps their brain a little bit as well. Sequencing is sometimes, we think of sequencing in the standards, it's more like kindergarten and first grade, but if our kids are struggling with sequencing, we're not going to get to the summaries we need in second, third grade and beyond. So something that they can do after you've read a story is they can just draw pictures on an index card. Depending on the grade level, they can add words to it. Or if we're at an older grade level, maybe we're going to write it, and then if we have time, draw those pictures. But then they can trade them with people to retell. They can take it home to tell a parent. So that could be like a homework assignment that you need to retell this to them. She just has these taped up here, but you can put them in pocket charts. And so, it could be a center activity. It could be something students can use. Put them on the rings that they could use as well. So they've got those stories that they can think back to. But it's just another way instead of a worksheet where they're labeling things that are already there. They're thinking of the things on their own. And again, maybe they're going to do something like this first. What happened first, second, third? Okay, well now today we're going to take some time and do some drawing, with this. Or you can read this story. It's good anytime, and I'm thinking end of the year if you're finished with your testing, and just something different to still work on those skills, but we'll keep them a little bit more engaged as well. And I set timers for my kids anytime we're doing something art. What I would want is I would want the writing, so I would tell them, I'm not hanging this in a museum. I just put something down that we can tell, because otherwise you'll have one kid 45 minutes later who's still working on card one. So if we set timers or require that they do the writing first. Yep.
Yes. I think we all have those.
Yes. Do the writing first, and then you can do your drawing. So, but just another thing that can help students. When we look at the standards in third grade, if we're talking about main idea now. If we're talking main idea, in third grade they will locate the main idea and key supporting details of a text or a section of a text. Fourth grade, they distinguish how key details support the main idea of a passage. Fifth grade, they're going to create an objective summary. And sixth grade, they create that objective summary. So when you're looking at the standards, always what I do is I will go to the standard below me and above me, because I want to see what was expected last year. How is this different? Am I, fifth grade, they've not written summaries before maybe because they're still working on finding those key details in fourth grade. Okay, so I know I'm going to have to provide a lot more instruction to them. And in second grade, that standard...
Real similar to that.
Yeah, I think it's real similar to that. It says students will begin to summarize events, or no, that's not the media one.
They all sound similar.
Yeah. In second grade, students will locate the main idea and supporting details of a text. So very, very similar to third grade. And the reason when we look at some of them, we're like, they're the same. What we have to remember about the ELA is that we have an increasingly complex text.
Yes.
And so finding the main idea and supporting details with a second grade book versus a third grade or a fourth grade is different.
Yes.
Or with a fiction piece and a nonfiction piece. And so when we talk about our standards being recursive, that's where they always come back. You're always coming back to it, because I may work for a quarter on fiction and finding main idea, but when I switch to nonfiction, it's like they've never seen it before.
Yes.
And so I've got to go back and we got to talk about, we did it in fiction this way, but in nonfiction it's this way. And if we look at poetry or these other types, that's why we always feel like we're going in circles. But because it's so different. So when you look at the standards, you can't just think, they did that last year. But we've added complexity with what they're reading for this next year.
Well, even with second grade, it seems like all we do is...
Yes.
It's the same. We've taught main idea and details. We've taught you know, I can't think. But,
Yes.
You know, we've taught
Yes.
the same thing all year. But what you just said, the light bulb comes on for me that our text, even in the base level, is more difficult
Yes.
now than it was at the beginning of the year. So now it makes sense why we've had to keep teaching this.
Right.
It was like, dude, we've done main idea in detail all year.
Right.
This area, or this frame.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Or it's a story I really liked, so I understood it better, and now I'm reading this other story that I'm like, what? And it threw all this other culture stuff in there that I'm not familiar with, and so it's harder. So it's the content as well as the complexity of it. But yes, it definitely, it changes. And that's why when you said you were second grade, I was like, well, this is going to fit for you too, because because we moved down. But really, with our new standards, we really try. That's another thing I've done on the writing committee for the standards, and so we really tried to look at that vertical alignment and how does it change. And so really, you do need to, as a teacher, don't just print off your second grade or your fourth grade standards. Look at what comes before and what comes after to kind of see where yours fit in a little bit, keeping in mind we've got different texts that we're working with. When we're talking about comprehension, if we teach these strategies without the text first, we want to practice the strategy without the demands of the decoding. So we talked about how difficult these strategies are, finding main idea. And if I already can't read it, how am I going to do that? So if I can use pictures first, it's going to really help the students with these skills that we're talking about. This is a main idea puzzle. It's a video that a colleague of mine found on YouTube, and I want to share the video with you. She's just got an idea for helping kids find main idea, but using a puzzle. This would be an anchor lesson that I would kind of use at the beginning, and then I can talk about it when I switch text. I'd be like, okay, so remember our puzzle. We're doing nonfiction now, but remember the puzzle. So I want to share this video with you. She does a great job explaining what she did in her classroom.
This is an idea I've been trying to play with to give kids an idea of the concept of main idea. So this is kind of like an anchor lesson that you can do. So I found this puzzle at Target, and these are like the realist nut shop. If you get a puzzle, you just might have something that's got quite a bit of activity going on around in it. And so I got these. This one, there's one for Rocket Money. So you want to get the puzzle, and you may want to glue it together so you can put it in your easel for a larger lesson. The next thing that I do is that I cover the entire puzzle, all the different pieces or activities that are going on. I cover those up with Post-it notes. The next thing is I'll peel off one Post-it note and pose the question, okay, so let's name what we actually see going on. So you don't want kids to predict here. We want them to just say, okay, so this is the part we see. There's a fish swimming in the water. I cover it back up, and then I cover the next piece. So like up here is where the sailboat is swimming, sailing in the ocean. And so I keep continuing to do this. Here the snail is digging, and playing in the sand. So you want to keep continuing this throughout the whole puzzle where you uncover each piece, name what's going on, and then cover it back up. After you've done that, then you come back to the beginning, and you are going to uncover the fish swimming and say, so we wanted to name what this whole puzzle was about, what our whole picture was about. Could we say that the whole piece is about the fish swimming in the water? And then the kids are like, no. And we're like, no, that's a corner piece. So you want to use that. That's what you use a puzzle is to try to anchor the idea of a puzzle piece. Is that our corner piece? So you just want to tell them, no, that's a corner piece. And then I'll go in and cover the next layer. And so could we say that our whole piece, if we step back and look at our whole picture, is the whole picture about a sailboat on the ocean? They're like, no. They're like, no, that's a corner piece. So you want to keep peeling each layer and asking the
concept to teach in my world.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yes.
It is. It's hard.
And so the thing to remember that, I've watched it several times now, but to catch on to is that when you first reveal the first piece, don't let the kids tell you a story about what it is. They have to, it's like you're finding evidence. You can only say what's happening there. So there's a fish swimming in the water. We're not going to name the fish. We're not going to say he's on a journey to find his dad. we're just saying what is on that piece. And so I really like this idea as an anchor activity because then you can always go back and so if a kid tells you later on in the year, they give you a supporting detail, you can say, is that a corner piece or is it the whole puzzle? And they'll remember back to that activity. And where did I put that here? So here, and as we're working on main idea as well, sorry, I think which one I was doing. Another activity, we'll come back to this puzzle one. Something you can show students is having a main idea bag, again, with pictures. So I have just a Ziploc baggie, and I've got lots of little pictures inside the Ziploc baggie. Here's a bicycle, an airplane, a bus, a shoe, a car, a motorcycle. So the main idea of this bag, transportation, getting from one place to another. This one has breakfast cereal items in it. So this bag is breakfast. So getting them, we think pictures and bags, well, that's like kindergartner, but that's where it starts. And sometimes we need to take them back there to remember that they know how to do that. With my older students, this is something you could put in a center if you had the bags and they could write down what the main ideas are. With my older students, I just had it up and we did it more as a whole group thing because it was just a quick, let's review this. And so I put this up. I always have them write down individually first, kind of like I had you do at the beginning, so that everyone's engaged, everyone has to be thinking about what's going on, everyone's going to have input. So what do you think when you see this? I've had kids say vegetables, a salad, food I don't like, And so we write down their ideas, and then we talk about, well, what do you think the best one would be for this picture? And, usually they'll come up with vegetables. Unless it's a whole class that doesn't like vegetables, then we go with foods I don't like. Because if it was a story and I'm listing all of the foods I don't like, my main idea is, these are foods I don't like as opposed to what I'm going to put in a salad. So here's one that I showed them. What's going on here? What's main idea? Breakfast. What's main idea here? They go through. Sports. This one, it could be art. Some of them will say art class. Some of them will say art supplies. They come with different ideas because these started out simpler. Now these could mean different things. They'll tell me school supplies. And so I'll say, maybe you have glitter in your desk right now. Or you have a glue gun on you? Are these school supplies? Because then we could get into you have to look at all of the details. So I would tell them, if you said school supplies, I would count that wrong. It'd be like you skipped this paragraph. You skipped these details because nobody has this in their desk. That's not been on a school supply list for you. This one, they'll look at it, they glance at it, and they write down party. And then we talk about, where do we usually see something like this? It's a birthday party or the hat. If you just wrote down party, you're not being specific enough. Your main idea is going to be too broad, and you need to narrow it in. It's like not reading a sentence, So and talk through those with the kids. So we're working on main idea, but we're using pictures before we take them to the text because then I can say, remember when we looked at the pictures? Are you missing one of the pictures? Are you missing a corner piece? Here, transportation, again, is one that we used. So depending on the level of your kids, again, 6th grade, I just did it like this. We went through it. 2nd grade, it would probably be multiple times that we're doing this. And here's the main idea bags, and here's another thing to work on it. Then, kind of like what she did, she was from Texas, and so they had the tax. But we would read this. Benjamin Franklin loved the city of Philadelphia. He started the city's first hospital and fire department. Ben also started Philadelphia's first public library. Benjamin Franklin worked very hard to make Philadelphia a better place to live. What's our main idea? Benjamin Franklin started the first public school, enjoyed Philadelphia, started the fire department, or worked hard to make his city a great place to live. I'm going to go through. This is a specific detail. I can point to that sentence. It's a corner piece. So I'm going to add that visualization of the puzzle to help them. Enjoyed Philadelphia. We talk about, well, it doesn't exactly say he enjoyed Philadelphia, but what does it say? He loved the city of Philadelphia. Kind of the same thing. That's a corner piece. Started the fire department. Wait a minute. That's a specific detail. I can point to it. It's a corner piece. So then this would become our whole puzzle, that he worked hard to make his city a great place to live. Does it say that? No. But can I think about it? If I'm doing all of these things, am I working pretty hard? Yes. So then taking them through that anchor activity again, that just, I'm big on anchor activities. Remember when we did? So I can pull you back. So spend more time with something like this and with the puzzle so that will help them connect later on. Another thing when we're thinking of, let's see, which one is this? Okay. Our standard is critical reading and writing. We're looking for students to find textual evidence when provided with examples of the literary elements. So switching gears a little bit, we talked about main idea. When we're talking about main idea and when we have them working on these and they're discussing, bundle your standards. When I mean bundle your standards, you add more than one. So we've got the speaking and listening going on. If we're sharing with a partner and we're doing the retelling bracelets, I'm going to bundle that because I'm learning how to work collaboratively in a group. I'm learning those social rules for having a discussion. When we put the speaking and listening first, that was very purposeful, mainly because when we start, if you think of the whole process, babies, what do they learn to do first? They learn to speak. So we need to be able to speak before we can get to all of these other things. It's the phonological awareness. It's the phonics. And then also with PASS, the speaking and listening was at the back. You know, you had your reading standards, you had your writing and grammar standards, and then you had the speaking and listening. And when I came to Oklahoma in 2006 and I was handed the PASS, teachers told me, okay, well, you need to do this section, but the speaking and listening, that's not tested, so don't worry about that. Well, that's one of the most important things. And I was like, no, wait, I'm going to worry about that. We're going to do those things. And so one of the reasons we put it up front is because it is so important and people don't communicate as well anymore. And you've got to learn how to get along with somebody and be able to collaborate even if you don't like what they're saying. So that's something to help you with main idea. Is that something you think you could use, the puzzle?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Huge.
Good. Yeah. And
all of it.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and even, you know, I would do that with my older students too because they need that reminder. It's not going to take as long for us because, you know, they've had that more.
That's something.
Yeah.
I have the same kids in 5th grade that I'm going to have in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
So I remember back in 3rd grade and then give it to the 4th grade teacher when we were in 4th grade.
Right,
We talked about
absolutely.
the puzzle pieces and
Yeah.
Right.
that would
And-
be 2 whole years.
Right.
Before I get them in 5th grade again, if it's still.
Yeah. And you have to kind of use the vocabulary interchangeably. You know, it's a corner piece. It's a supporting detail. And kind of say both at the same time because otherwise they're going to, you know, read their test question. It's going to say, what's the supporting detail? And you're like, I don't know. And you're going to be like, no, you do know. So.
I wonder if there's a way to type supporting detail on top of that puzzle.
Oh, you could. Yes, definitely.
Some
Yeah.
way that when it comes up, they realize, oh, the corner piece is a
Supporting
detail.
Absolutely.
After seeing it over and over and over, it'll stick.
Yes, that would be a great addition to that is to have that text on there for them to see. Absolutely. Another thing I wanted to talk about today was finding our textual evidence. So working more with stories, finding these details in the stories that they need to find. And so you can see they have to find textual evidence in 3rd grade of setting, plot, characters, characterization, and theme. And you can kind of see it moves each grade level. So here, you know, example, time, and place. We're still working on setting. We've moved to the characters here in 4th grade, knowing the protagonist and antagonist, adding that vocabulary in. 6th grade, we add in conflict, with that. So just you can see how it builds each year. So when I looked at them this year, I was like, oh, conflict is going to be new. I know the teachers talked about it last year because you do just kind of inherently talk about those things. So the kids knew that.
Yeah.
Not saying you can't talk about conflict in second grade, because you can. It's just, make sure we do these other things building. And theme is so hard. I mean, for kids, and I'll remind them, remember when you had themes when you were younger and it was this, yeah, okay, well, or if you're a great expectation, remember the themes, your character words, that kind of fits with theme. So I always go back to previous knowledge, what they've done before.
Well, it's hard to differentiate for my students.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between theme and main idea?
Mm-hmm. And we talk about then, you could say, if you had puzzles, you could say the main idea of this puzzle, and if you had a similar puzzle, well, the main idea is not the same, so if it's at the beach scene, but then, somebody building a snowman maybe it's with friends, or maybe it's something, and have that visual for them, that theme can fit with any, or multiple stories. Not just one. A main idea can only fit with one story. Yeah, I've been working on that again. So, and I know they've had it, and yeah, we still do it in 6th grade because we've got harder text that we're doing it with.
Right.
So they know the words, but then when I put this longer story in front of them, what?
Right.
And so also I'm going to bundle this. I'm going to talk about this as well with summarizing. So I've got to be able to identify all of these things, and when I identify those things, then I'm also going to put them into my summaries, because we have to summarize events or plots. Well, if I'm talking about all those plot elements, I'm going to put them into a summary. So when I'm looking at my standards and what I'm covering, I'm actually covering something from, this one is from 2, students will use a variety of recursive reading and writing processes, back with 3, the critical reading and writing. So the standards all fit together. I have a hard time figuring out which ones to write down, because I'm like, it's all of them. I'm just going to write all of them, And so, but then I also know, well, what am I specifically focusing on this time? But when we find evidence that requires students to go back to the text to respond to the questions or comments, we can ask them, what did the author say to make you think that? Where is that in the text? What are your clues? So asking them those questions will force them to go back into the text. Here's an activity that I like to do with students. Again, we're summarizing, but we're going to use pictures first. And so I've got this picture up here, and I might say, okay, let's summarize this picture. I need to answer who, what, when, where, why, and how. So if I'm looking at this, who is in this? I'm going to assume this is a family, a dad and a mom and 2 boys. When is this happening? Well, it doesn't tell me, so I'm going to use my clues. It's maybe summertime because there's lots of green grass. The grass is a little bit taller, so maybe it's later in the summer. I know it's sometime warm. I know, or there's someplace warm would be the other thing I could say. So then my where is, it looks to me like they're in a mountain area. There's a town down here. They're on a trail. Why are they doing it? Maybe they wanted exercise. Maybe it's a Saturday afternoon. Maybe they're on vacation. You accept different things because we're just looking at a picture. We don't know. How are they doing it? They're riding bikes. So we talk through all of that, and then we can put it into a summary. So we're practicing summarization and writing summaries just by using a picture first. And then I can transfer that into a detail, because then I tell my kids, I tell you it's got to make a picture in your mind. So what are you picturing in your mind as we're working on these summaries? So a variety of pictures. Here we talk through this. Sometimes we don't know when we talk about the when. We don't always know when. But then we talk about, well, what clues do we see? Well, he's got a jacket on, so maybe it's not summertime because it's a jacket, or he's in a colder area. This one doesn't give us a lot of clues. We can say maybe it's a weekend because he's there. What do you see?
Daylight outside.
Yes, it's daylight outside, so it's during the day. And teach them to look for those little things because then you can say, just like you found all those clues in the picture, that's what you're going to do when you're reading. You've got to find those sentences. We're finding our evidence is what we're finding for our ideas. And talk through, again, every place that they see these things. And then we won't, there's just a couple of us here, so I'll just show you what I have the kids do, is I get pictures, and usually I write the who, what, when, where, why, so they know that's on there. But if I just put them into a sleeve, they can use the dry erase marker, and they would actually go through and write who. This is my evidence for the who. This is I'm going to write when on here. Here's my evidence for when. Where, they can point to a couple of different things. Well, it's someplace that gets snow, so it's probably not Florida, So we talk about how you have to accept a little bit more generalized statements when you're just using pictures. So when I find these pictures, I just use Google Images, and I typed in a trail in the fall, because I wanted specific, because when we talk about the setting, we talk about how it has to be a time and a place. And so I need a picture that's really going to show a time period. So I can tell it's fall. So I tried to pick like a fall picture. This one, I typed in kids building a snowman in Google Images, and I just copied it and pasted it and printed out, kids, so we can see that it's the winter time. And this one would be a little bit more difficult because it's, they're sitting on the porch, but if they see the flag, I thought they'll think 4th of July, or they'll think Memorial Day, maybe, depending on their background knowledge. But so when I'm looking at all the pictures that come up, finding something that's got some clues in them. So again, I just use Google Images and print random things off. And I've used pictures of my family before too, because that helps personalize it, Because, I find I have to be careful because my son's in 5th grade now. So I know everybody, so I have to be careful with my stories that I tell. I better not tell them. Yeah. It was easier when I taught when they didn't know them or they weren't that old. But this gets the kids actually writing the who, what, when, where, why, how, and then they can go to their summary. So if they're doing it in a group first, that the group can help them, and then move to, okay, will you do one on your own now? And then, again, it's an anchor activity. I want you to write a summary of the story. You go, I don't know how to write a summary. Yes, you do. Remember when we did this? Now you're finding your evidence in the reading, and then you can move them from doing it here. If they're writing who, what, when, where, why, how, they can write it in their text. If you've got a book, or if it's been photocopied, they can write in the margin, here's my who, and highlight it, underline it. Here's my where, just like we did with the picture. So if we back up and break it down for them, that will help a little bit. And if I've got struggling readers, I'm still teaching them how to find main idea and supporting details, so they know that. So eventually when that reading catches up for them, they have that knowledge, and it's not just, we're just working on decoding. Because we need to work on decoding, but we also need to teach them the other skills that they're a little bit behind on. So I really like that activity to help them kind of figure out where they're at, or figure out summarization before we move to adding all the text. Because as soon as you put the text in front of them, it's like they've forgotten everything. Everything. So if you want to think for a minute, there's some space on your paper. And I've shared lots of things with you. Just give you a minute to jot down some of the ideas that we talked about. Or I know a lot of times in a workshop I'll hear something and I'll use that as an anchor to take me someplace else. So I just want to give you a couple of minutes to jot down some ideas or thoughts you're having. next one that I wanted to talk about with you was inferencing. And inferencing really starts, I think it was in second grade. They're going to ask and answer those inferential questions using the text to support their answers. Second and third grade is with guidance and support. Fourth grade, we take away the guidance and support. And then in fifth and sixth grade, it looks a little bit differently. The numbers don't match up because we also added in the differentiating the structures of the text, but it also then and content by making inferences about text and using that textual evidence. So it's a different number and it looks a little different, but inferencing is still in the upper grades standards. And the thing to remember about the standards as well is that they are end of the year standards. It's what the students should be able to do by the end of the year. So when you're in October and you're reading this and you're like, oh my gosh, they have to inference and they don't get it, realize you've got to the end of the year. So the standards are, by the end of the year, this is what they should be able to do. Okay? And it's always, of course, okay to look ahead at what they can do, especially if we're at the end of the year and they've got that. What can I prepare them for the next grade? But I go back all the time. Like I said, I'm just doing some of these things I'm telling you to do in second grade with my sixth grade because we've got to build up to that to get them to that point. So it's okay to go back a little bit, do things that you're like, well, but that doesn't really fit the standard, but that's at the end of the year. I'm going to do all these other things. I'm going to still write that down as my standard because that's what I'm eventually going to get to, but I'm using it as a stepping stone on the road there.
So it's okay if I get, like, my class that I got this year, they're so much lower than what I'm used to receiving times past. So it's okay to go back and teach first grade standards with that in mind, of building that foundation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, your goal, we need to teach the kids where they're at.
Right.
And so if they are missing some of that, we absolutely have to go back because otherwise they're going to have that gap.
Yes.
And so we want to move them as quickly as we can and scaffold them. But yeah, if they're missing something, like I told you, I was doing phonics with sixth graders. Because that's what they needed and that's where they were at. Now, we don't want to spend too much time there. And sometimes you have those kids, those classes that come through, and it's just like, what were the moms drinking this year? Or, or why is this group so much lower? Or sometimes it becomes attitudes by middle school. I had my group last year, a smart group of kids, but they didn't care. Like, it was cool. Like, the leaders of the class didn't like to study. Or didn't know. They would make fun of kids who did homework, even though they did their own homework. And so all of their friends were failing. They're still getting A's because, they would study or their parents would make them, but it wasn't cool to study. And now this year, I've got kids who are more, well, what'd you get? Oh, I'm going to beat you next time. And it completely changes the environment. So you never know who you're going to end up with. But for inferencing, again, I go back to pictures. And if we're making inferences, and using language. The picture shows, I already know, therefore I can infer. And if we can get the kids and teachers using this same language is where it's really going to help our students. So if I know what you said in second grade, I'm going to build on that for third grade for what they're saying. I use a picture like this. So I tell the students, okay, so this picture shows a girl on her cell phone. There's a man standing next to her. It looks like he might be wearing some kind of uniform. And when I'm looking at his face, he's not smiling. Okay? Because I'm not making up a story yet. I'm saying what the picture shows. My schema, I know that if someone has that face, they're not very happy. I also know when I'm looking at this, they're sitting in some kind of seating. I'm going to think that maybe they're at a movie. Therefore, I can infer that this girl is on the phone at a movie and she's getting in trouble by someone who works there. Or a play, or, something like that. But I'm teaching that inferencing through a picture before I put that text in place. The picture shows a boy with his dinner. There's vegetables on his dinner, and he's not smiling. I already know that many kids do not like their vegetables, and that is not a happy look on his face. He does not look excited. Therefore, I can infer the boy does not like his dinner. With the picture first. Okay. This one is kind of a gross feet picture, but the kids like it. So then I turn it over to the kids to do. This picture shows not pretty feet that have a triangle on them. I already know that that flip-flops make that pattern, and that sunburn. I know that sunburn hurts because I've been sunburned before. Therefore, I can infer that this person was wearing flip-flops and got sunburned, and their feet probably hurt really bad right now. And so, again, using those pictures. So when we go into the text and we're reading things like, and it says the person was crying, or they said it in a mean voice. What do you know about what you're reading that I can put here? So use pictures to teach those comprehension skills. We know that children are naturally curious. We need to teach them how to ask questions. If we give them these stems, I wonder, what if, that's what she asked us this morning, what if, why, how could, we teach them that language and make that a part of what they're doing, then it will help expand their learning a little bit. Comprehension is complex, ongoing, cyclical. We need foundational decoding skills, background knowledge, explicit instruction, constant monitoring, and frequent practice. It's not something that we can say, well, I'm teaching comprehension today. Well, you got a big job. There's many, many things, and we're always going back to it, and we're going back to it with informational text, with fiction, with poetry, lots of different things. My bibliography is on there. There's a 3-2-1 on there. I give that to students a lot of times as an exit ticket. I change it up all the time. 3 things you learn, 2 questions you have, a comment. If we're doing fiction, 3 things that happen in the story, 2 questions you have. If we're not finished with the story, a prediction. So, just something that the kids can write down. If you don't like the numbers, it can be 2, 1, and 1. Whatever.
I lost the last.
You lost. Oh, sorry. Frequent practice.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
And lots to fit in our small time frame there. But I appreciate you coming, and my email is at the top of that first page that we did.
Yes.
If you want anything, have any questions, just email me. Say, hey, this is the grade I taught, and I will be happy to help you how I can.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we taught inferencing. Our team did with the Disney videos. Well, actually, they were Pixar, where we showed
Oh, yes.
the different